Hi. My topic is the all-knowing presence. This presence, the presence of a being, the presence of consciousness, and to know that that all-knowing presence is with you always. It's with everyone because it's part of us. It can never be destroyed. We could forget about it. We can pretend it doesn't exist. We can be ignorant about it. And yet that all-knowing presence is what we are part of. Inseparable. And I have a new student in London, and her issue was she really didn't know what she wanted to do with her, with her work and herself. And because I know people really do know, and yet when you share with other people what you're going to do, you also open yourself up for them to let you know it won't work and it can't happen. And then just that thought of that idea, by giving other people that power greater than we have, because they know more than we do about ourselves, which is not true. But when we ask other people for their opinion, other people are going to give their opinion, but we really don't need opinions. And it's just like trying to use the mind to solve your problems when the mind creates problems, this false mind, not the true mind, divine mind. Divine mind's all-knowing. And so when we were working on our session over the phone, by the end it was so thrilling for me for her to be so enthused, because she always did know what she wanted to do and who she is. And she had come from Nigeria with her mother and all her struggles and what she had really accomplished with herself. And it was really all based on hers and her mother's spirituality, in that sense of knowing that there is a divine presence within. And yet we can know that, but we can forget when we're around other people who do not know that, who are accepting all the limitations that they've been told are true and real and absolute. I remember when I first wrote "What You Think of Me Is None of My Business." And before that, I was already a motivational speaker and speaking for companies and groups and banquets and that sort of thing. And people said, "Oh, well, you can't speak at these things unless you have a book." Well, I didn't have a book, but how come I got speaking engagements anyway, you see? Then after that book was out, then people said, "Oh, you have to have another book, because you can't just have one book, because this is the rule." And people are always kind of telling you what all the rules are and what you can't do and what all the limitations are, when we're gods without limit. And that means that when we get in touch with what we really want, it would be good to take a piece of paper if you need and just start writing down what's really in your heart. If money was no issue, if age was no issue, if education was not an issue, if background and your past experience was not an issue, what would be the truth? Now, the problem is when most people go to share or to reveal what they want, they're coming from their mind and not their heart. Not what feels right, not feels good, not. And this person, I in the very beginning of our session on the phone, I picked up right away. She's a speaker, she's a teacher, she's got books and all these kind of things. And when it got to the end of the session, she started telling me that she had a speaking engagement coming up, and I said, I knew. And I tell you, it's so fascinating when we really look into our own being and start bringing forth our own inner knowing and what we desire in our heart and what feels right for us and the way we want to live and such. Like for me, I'm a nature person, and I always, when I looked many years ago as to where I had bliss, it was always being in nature. And we have our own divine nature, and it's that all-knowing presence that is with us all the time, that we are part of. And so we're all one already, all part of that same all-knowing presence. And yet we're all individuals. And this consciousness that we have, according to the Vedas, has two parts: what we know and what we do. And the problem is when we're full of false knowledge that is not based on absolute unconditional love and absolute knowing of who we really are and being who we really are, as kind and loving and creative and problem solvers in a sense. Because when you come from the all-knowing presence, the problem that is solved does not create another problem, because it works out for the highest good of all. And so what the essence of this is, when we feel frustrated, stopped, no passion, no enthusiasm, it's like, and I don't know, and confused and all that. It's not because we don't know, but because we believe the mind and the mind of others that have told us it's not possible. There was a woman that used to write an article that I liked in a magazine, and it was called "Refuse the Verdict." And it's, everybody has a verdict. They want to tell you why it won't happen. And if you take that in, then you believe that when all things are possible. And if you're lacking that enthusiasm and there's fear and doubt and insecurity, you're in that false mind. That's a symptom of it. And to free yourself from that is somehow to allow yourself to fully express and share what's in your heart, but not with someone who's going to validate and reinforce your doubt or the confusion or the chaos. And with so many complications, it appears, around us, different opinions and all that, but they're basically two sides of every story or more, because that keeps that conflicting reality going. And when we're in our heart, there is no duality, there is no conflict, because there is not an enemy. There's not another side, because it's a certainty. And it's almost like the difference. Voting is about who's going to have the most votes. But actually in societies, ancient societies that were very harmonious and worked well together, they all operated on consensus, which meant it wasn't about who's right and who's wrong, whose opinion is right and whose opinion is wrong. It was people who had tuned in because they were not false ego directed as I'm going to be the greatest, or I'll have the most money, or I'll get the most power, or I'm going to control the world. Da, 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 da. It was like, wow, what's going to work for everybody and everyone, not everybody, but everybody and everyone. And to know that this is the power that you have. And if you're in this doubt period, it's that you've forgotten the all-knowing presence is with you, but you must turn within, because it works on free will. It's the divine does not interfere. You have to desire that and ask for that. And then when we have, that's our main desire, is to know, to love, and to serve, to be our true self, with the capital S, the divine in all, where we are already all one, is that you have that choice to either be believing all of those thoughts, those words of lack and limitation and what's not possible. No wonder children in school could be bored, because we're creative. And when we're allowed, but not even allowed, we have to give that to ourselves, and not be expecting and saying, well, they didn't tell me, and they didn't tell me, and this doctor didn't tell me, and the dentist didn't tell me, and the real estate person didn't tell me, and the government didn't tell me. Really? When you give your whole beingness over to someone else, you're not with the all-knowing presence. It's being cloaked in ignorance, layer after layer after layer. And then you perceive people in this dumbed down state as if robots, just fulfilling a repetitive job, just doing the same thing over and over again, just to survive. But you don't need to survive. You're a divine being. You're a God. Not the big deal, but you're a God with all godlike powers and qualities. And the first step is to get to know the all-knowing, all-loving, everywhere present presence that is with you, that is part of you. And we're so taught to look outside to some search engine, what we would say someone else, that we have said knows more than we do about who we are and what we desire and what we want. I had got the opportunity to be with Buckminster Fuller when I had my ministry in San Diego, California. And as many of you know, Buckminster Fuller wrote Critical Path and the Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth, and really brought forth a geodesic dome. And what he was so cool about him is he wanted to find out, see, the divine experiment. Why not find out what's possible for you? And I don't mean in following in the footsteps of the celebrities and the world leaders and all these people. No, who cares? It's like if you're a singer, but you're not singing because you think, well, there's already singers. That doesn't matter. You need to sing. It has nothing to do with anything. Well, how much money would I bet? It has nothing to do with anything. Because when you're in your right place. And so Buckminster Fuller wanted to find out, what could one person do without a formal education? But that meant that he would go where he needed to go to get the information he wanted for what he wanted to accomplish, you see. Then we call that self-educated, as if that's not as good as institutionalized education, schooling. And schooling's like a bunch of fish all kind of going together. So that's the uniqueness of who you are. So if you're feeling all of that repression and suppression and confusion, it's in the mind. And you got to get yourself to that place where you've got someone that you could actually talk with, to share with, who brings you back to yourself, to help you, but doesn't judge or criticize you or tell you what's possible or not possible. And that's very rare. And the best thing is to find your place, if peace and quiet in nature somehow, or you create that in your home with nice plants and flowers, doing the best with what you've got, or you find a place and give yourself that without cell phones, without electronics, without others, without anything that's chattering, and to be still. To be still and know that I am God, not Terry, but that I am is of that greater I am that we are all part of, that can master and handle anything expertly, instantly. Just the divine experiment of learning to trust in the all-knowing presence. And how you do that is you got to use it. You got to start doing that. So no one cares more about you than you do. And ultimately, they cannot do it for you. You must do that for yourself. You can't buy it. Can't sell it. No, can't get it in a catalog or on the internet. Doesn't exist there. Knowledge, though, but you got to apply it. And when you apply that sacred and spiritual knowledge, you empower yourself and thus are empowering all to be that way. Yeah. So, just find your spot. Get a piece of paper if you need or whatever. Just write down what's really in your heart, what you really want to do. And maybe you were stopped at childhood, or maybe as a teenager, or at all different levels. But don't make it wrong and bad or guilty or angry because you're an eternal being. They say, well, I'm glad I found out it finally at this age. Give up that age nonsense. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. And this, let it flow. Activate, reactivate your life. And then nobody and nothing can defeat you, knock you off. You're strong, loving, powerful, centered.